Hello there. My name is Stephen Leon, and welcome to the From the Left show. Okay, today's topic is very appropriate. It's borders and stuff. Uh, there's anyone can narrate what's going on with all that. You see the impasse of parties and whatever. The left had imposed some things that they were a little more would have considered extreme in the past, and they figured that they could use that also to get foreign aid. And then the right nixed that, and it looks like there's another separate package going for foreign aid. So it kind of leaves it, whether that goes through, it leaves the right in a position to basically what it seems is to make Joe Biden look worse than he already is. Joe Biden's known to be an F up. Those are Obama's own words. If you just Google that, you can see that, as vice president, he was somewhat of an unguided missile, and we can get into the whole psychology as to why he was nominated and why we voted for him and why he's, the way the parties are set up right now, they just give the nomination to the incumbent regardless of performance. That should change. Let's say we get, it's been that way since Ford. Let's say if we got a president in there and they served one term, and regardless of performance, if they chose to, why do you have to serve two terms? You know what I mean? If they were to choose, regardless, make it competitive, bring people in there and see what the people would decide. There's also some ranked choice voting. Some people may not understand that, but if your principles are of democratic choice of what people want, a constitutional democratic republic, then ranked choice voting would be that. I know there's always going to be some kind of opposition to any idea that's out there, but if you look at it rationally, look at the person's personality that is presenting whatever it is to you. Look at it that way. And if I could say that with utmost modesty, coming from, again, my name is Stephen Leon. I'm running for Congress here in Virginia's 8th district. As an independent candidate, my bias is to the left, but I am cognizant, like I said in the previous show, I don't want the party to go to excess government subsidization. You could call that socialist if you want. You can look up a term in Google and see the synonyms for it, but really, what are the ideas associated with the word? Anyone that has worked, blue collar, white collar, whatever it is, whatever task we have, we hash that stuff out. What do you mean by that? We have colloquialisms. If you're working, my uncles did home improvement work, and we would have nicknames for tools and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so really to look at it that way, that's the most important thing. That would be an independent principle, rather than just to rehash blindly key terms or whatever it might be. And I say this with all modesty because here in Virginia's 8th district, just west of the Potomac River, it's the state of Virginia, right? First congressional district there next to DC, and we happen to be the most educated, one of the most, collectively the entire district. But Arlington, and again, it depends on where you go. It's within the top 5, depending on which year within the last 5 years where we're at. We're also the most fittest city, so we've got it going on. But when we have someone like my opponent, Congressman Don Beyer, coming around who's just blindly, where's his motivation? He has such a diverse portfolio, like where is it, whether policy goes either way, left or right, or not at all, he's still capitalizing. Where's his motivation? I could make this entire podcast about just going after him alone. I've already, through social media, I have come at him and asked him for a special debate. We could host that live stream. We could do that at Venture X and the Republican candidates, Hirak Christian Kim. Not seeing very much on that is constitutional with him. But going back to borders, so really what we want to look at is the root cause of things. And what is the root cause of this socioeconomic crisis? It is socioeconomics. That's what it is. People aren't coming over the border with arms, with a Mexican flag or any other flag trying to set up shop here. They don't have any opportunity, and it's just become systematic over there. And they don't have the resources or the opportunity to keep that at bay, right? So my proposal, if you've seen on my website, and I'll share some of this in a second here, but just speaking about it is where, okay, so if we look at everything like a large puzzle, like we want to decouple from China because out of the principle, right? We don't want another country buying us out. You know what I mean? So what we would want to do is, we've never truly been isolationists. So we need to keep our interests first. And again, if you want to call that America first, go ahead. That's fine by me. I don't care. So I've put out there for a couple of years now a decoupling platform, which would be a Gross Domestic Product Protection Act. I'll say that again. Gross Domestic Product Protection Act. Never heard of such a thing, right? So that would be a president would have to negotiate that. If you look at the Constitution, I can yap about it all I want and call out other nations, which is not a Washingtonian creedish kind of thing to do, to go out there and just call out foreign leaders or foreign peoples like that. That's just not who we are. If you see the stuff that I go after people in the United States, maybe there's U2, Bono, I don't go after the guy, but he says America is an idea, right? We love that. We love that we're able to see that outside perception. Everyone loves U2, right? Who doesn't like U2? So anyways, what we would want to decouple it at a ratio of 70-30. Our interests foremost at 70-30. And then, it's, I call it a ballpark, because that may not fly with every industry. And that again would have to be done in incremental phasing. So if we were to pull out our resources and our labor and our manufacturing, let's say they could just keep 30%, we have 70% comes back here. We have a low employment rate, and even then, some people, whether they were born incapable of working or something happened or they're in between, our system is set up where we have temporary assistance. And, we do our best to look out for one another outside of the government. Even then, depending on what it is, substance abuse and alcoholism is definitely rose. That's another thing. There's one in every family. That's a huge thing. All this stuff ties into my platform. I wish I could it would look a little messy if you put like a spider web and you show how everything came in. So even then, like just the out of principle, we want to pull our resources out from China. And I hear some voices on the right, especially in the Republican presidential race, that just this whole mongering ideologue of just brute force, you know what I mean? It's got to go. I mean, there's other things. There's diplomacy first, right? It doesn't make sense that we bolster China's economy after World War II. We created that embargo, and Japan attacked us with Pearl Harbor because of that. And then with their population and everything, they expedited and they pretty much with competition, like they just have more numbers, so they quickly are progressing, right? And now again, but out of principle, we don't want any other country, buying us out. So if we were to do a 70-30 where we'd have our interests here, we would have a lot of things to build. There's a lot of things. Again, climate change is real. It's an emergency. It's the science is there. It's irrefutable. It's very difficult sometimes when people get stuck in information bubbles on the internet, or if they don't want to believe it, they get in denial. Again, it's like having an alcoholic in the family. You know what I mean? If they're the breadwinner or not, or if you yourself are that alcoholic, I don't want to turn the show into that. But just to be in denial about anything, your relationship, something around your home, it's that is one of the most profound things that a human being can. I've struggled my own personal life with of denial to recognize that if two different people are giving you independent opinion, and you should listen to that. You should. Sometimes people get it wrong. You know what I mean about you. I get pigeonholed. People and all that stuff, and I can defend myself and really take a look at it. And that's taken, just I call it a moral inventory. I call it a spiritual thing that I do. So, anyways. So how I bring that up with borders and stuff, because really we want to look at it as the solutions, right? Because what we're seeing is the right basically just wants to make Joe Biden look worse than he already is, which isn't entirely fair. He did drop the ball at the border. But what is he going to do about? Nobody knows what to do about the socioeconomic crisis. So if we decouple from China and we recognize that climate change is real, and we don't want government subsidization, which would be like a Green New Deal, broad scope Green New Deal, where we just are forcing the government to. You hear the word tax thrown around and just all that stuff. But again, it's the ideas that we want to go back to rather than just the personalities that are promoting those ideas, or even the opposition to that, or saying how we're looking at these things just for lack of better ideas. You just want to stick with oil. I'm all about energy diversity. If you've seen my LinkedIn profile, you'll see where how you can still recycle carbon, you can still reuse it, you can still manufacture with it, just don't burn it in the atmosphere. Asphalt is very much, you wouldn't call it green, but it's, we don't burn it. It can be reused. You know, it's very useful. We use it. Asphalt's not going anywhere, and that's huge for the American infrastructure with how much, just how many roads there are. You know, like with energy infrastructure conversion, all that stuff. That's huge for what that's going to do for us economically. It took us a while to get 5G. Some place like Japan, much smaller island, just took us a while to roll it out. That's with anything. We pioneer stuff, and people, other countries, they modify it, they make it more efficient or something, right? And it's just easier in some ways. So my proposal, again, to mitigate climate change, there's some carbon cap stuff that's going around there, and it's a very, very incremental phasing. This is another word that you'll, with any change, you know what it is. There's always some things, I don't know, you might be able to change overnight. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just been bothering you for so long that just one day you just say F it, you know what I mean? And you just change it the next day, and you never look back. Or you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? So with what we really want to do with climate change is there's 3 levers. There's I've said this before, it's the finance, the government, and then there's the technology. The technology's been there. We don't want to have the government have most of that lever. We want the financial sector. The government's principles to be a fundamental safeguard. You know, that's what we want. And with the balance of parties, it's pretty much there. There could be some reformation always, but so anyways, what we really need to do is go to the financial sector, and the easiest way to explain that, it's the most simplified way, is that we want to mandate the fossil fuel assets to offset the green premium. The green premium is not just, it's cement, it's energy, it's batteries, it's all this stuff. How are we going to build all this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of technology. Again, I come from the intellectual property law fields, and there's so much technology that doesn't. Well, first off, this is cool. Out of only 5% of patent applications that get granted, not patent applications that get filed, patent applications that get granted, actually make it to market, and that's either from independent inventors or large-scale assignees at big corporations and things like that. So if we go to the private sector and we mandate the fossil fuel assets to offset the green premium, then what we're doing is we're getting the financial sector to put in that long-term investment. Otherwise, it wouldn't be attractive. And we are running. I like to think of the psychology of where we are as a species. And if you hear a lot of people saying we're on thin ice, and maybe that's misdirected because of your denial, and it's climate change, okay? Go to the Citizens Climate Lobby. There are a lot of smart, educated people on both sides. It's nonpartisan, and you know, it's a crisis, and we're seeing one of the there's an argument saying that the Earth will have its natural warming cycle. You know, we may never have another ice age. We've just had 5. You know, we can't compare that to another Goldilocks zone. Look at how many moons it has by how many shadows that we see passing through it. But we don't know what its climate is like. We don't know its developmental cycle. It might be a little bit different depending on the color and size of the star, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But but we also have empirical evidence that says that they're displacing CO2 into the atmosphere will affect the Earth's composition. She has a composition, right? So it gets into the soils, it gets into the oceans, and it gets everywhere, and it disrupts. And at the rate that we're going, so how does all that tie into the borders crisis? So with that Gross Domestic Product Protection Act, and with that mandating the private sector, the financial sector to offset the green premium, we will have so many jobs to fill, so much technology to build. And if we have that Gross Domestic Product Protection Act, where we're not going to go to China or anywhere else, at least stay with that 70% protection, we can outsource our business to Mexico and places like that. So they wouldn't need to have a reason to come over here. And another thing that I would negotiate is that with these, whether they're manufacturing facilities or or satellite companies or outs or whatever have you, we would still give them the same sort of protections that we would have here in the U.S. So yeah, I'd have to look at Mexico's laws, you know what I mean? But any labor laws and things like that, we would still treat them fairly as if they were working here. So let's imagine if you were at a Mexican facility or whatever, it's an American company leased on Mexican land. And that's the thing about it. What if America would to buy that land, right? What if every country had a 70-30 gross domestic product protection? That'd be perfect balance, wouldn't it? Anyways, so lease or buy, that's completely up to Mexican landowners, things like that. So, the same hours, the same 401ks that would benefit us, and then problem solved, boom. And then skilled personnel and such. And then, I put this on social media before. There's so many different ways you can rehash this. And that's the thing about two-dimensional walls. You know what I mean? You can say the same things over and over again. It's exhausting. It's just to stay relevant. Like if you don't hear from me in like a week, you think, oh, you know what I mean? You just want to look at those first 5 posts. I actually invented a graphical user interface where you could have like the most prominent things, and then people can just go in there whenever they want, and look at the most things that you would think were the most prominent, and then it can just a whole 3D environment like that. I think people would engage and be less fatigued by it. I don't know why we're not savages. We didn't evolve to have two-dimensional worlds. So, yeah, and if that doesn't work, I would like to give a shout out to Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. He said it pretty good that it was incremental phasing. If we were to get the border secured first and then do incremental phasing with any more funding for what's going on in Ukraine. And it's a big mess. You've seen what the International Court has said about Israel and how I've never taken a religious narrative in these things. How could I? You know what I mean? As a human being, as a politician, you know what I mean? If you look at that First Amendment, there's unity with these positions of religion there, and that the founding fathers understood that. If you know the research, the American nation this is John Adams' quote, if you know about the Treaty of Tripoli, that the American government is in no way founded in the Christian religion. That's a fact. Now, that doesn't mean that they practiced universal Christian principles in their own lives or that they didn't go to church. They just recognize that just these ideologues of monopolizing and things like that, of higher powers of own understanding, wasn't the place of the business government to do it. And they saw how governments have come and gone because of that, and how people just divides people, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyhow, that being said, I'm not the only one that thinks that. So, yeah, Tim Scott was basically saying these things, and Don Beyer is just, I don't know, his staff, you know what I mean? I'm sure there's probably more to it, but it's just on the surface of it. It looks like he spends so much money just recycling the same divided things. And it's like, well, let's resolve these things. If you want to resolve MAGA, if MAGA is a problem, what is fundamentally MAGA trying to accomplish, right? That would be getting money out of politics. Trump campaigned on draining the swamp. He didn't do it. He became a part of it. He was always he campaigned on it. At first, it just kind of came up. That's a big problem with government. He didn't do it. He just blamed the left. But the left is a part of the swamp. If you go just look at capitaltrades.com, look at their net worth and see where they're trading, how much money they're circulating around, and how much time they're spending doing that, right? And also media literacy. That's a part of my platform, media literacy, right? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. I have that ability. So we can take, all this you can do on your own. I hope this comes out right. Okay. Looks like I have security features set here on my Zoom. So I'm not going to do that. Next show. Yeah. So, with that, if you go to my website, leonforcongress.us, and you look at my borders and security section, I didn't use drop downs. I want you to go and read each section, I use the simplest, most plain language to get that, right? And those would be the fundamental principles there. All the minutia and everything can be rolled out later. Why am I going to go ahead and invest more of my time to come up with a draft bill when I haven't really spoken to anybody in the House and circulated around. There could be other ideas floating around. So, but the fundamental outline, the fundamental principle is there. So if that stuff doesn't work, if I can't if I'm elected and I can't get Joe Biden or someone to get close to Joe Biden to negotiate a gross domestic product protection act, if he wants to give the 2020, if the party wants to give the 2028 election over to the Republicans just for the sake of balance, I mean, if you look at the way the parties have gone back and forth the past 50 years or since forever, we just people go back, but what's getting resolved, right? So it makes no difference to me. As long Gross Domestic Product Protection Act is not a Republican Democrat thing. It's an American thing, right? And look at what that may very well do for our positions and just how we're able to progress and advance the world with just the way that we think, the way that we pioneer. That fundamentally, what the apex of what we've reached is a general welfare fiscal responsibility. It may have always been that way with all governments that ever come and gone in the world, right? If you ever look at that, it very well could be like who's corrupt. I mean, if you look at Matthew 21:12, that's right out of the Bible. Jesus casted out all those who were buying and selling. I think a J6 of that, but guess what? That's not exactly one. Would be illegal to just go in there, jump the fence, and turn over tables. It almost looks like that's what they were doing, but that didn't get the money out of politics. That just Trump just blamed everyone else again, like he always does, right? So and that's what happens when you're sick and then denial like that. You just blame other people, and then people follow you. You have to accept that. Okay. So, anyways, so if all that doesn't work with decoupling from China with the Gross Domestic Product Protection Act, going to engage in that financial lever with moderate minimum legislation, and then the skilled personnel and improving the continental socioeconomics, really. If that all doesn't work, then we can consider building more wall, right? Because it's just too far. It's too expensive. It's too expensive. Walls don't work. I mean, I think I never hear the argument from the right. I'm being very fair here. I'm looking at my own party objectively, and I hope that more would do that with the right and with reasonable language. It's very easy to get caught up in whatever language, you know what I mean? But Reagan and the Berlin Wall, what was that all about? I think, like seriously, and again, I go back to that thing where I made a reference to 5G before. You know what I mean? It's like how easy it was to implement 5G versus here. That's a lot of wall. And if you get 100,000 hungry people or whatever it is looking for work, just ram the gate. You know what I mean? This is one thing I don't like about my Republican opponent, Hirak. He said in a CPAC, he supported shoot to kill orders. Again, this isn't an invasion. By legal distinction, it is not a war. You know what I mean? They're not coming over here with arms and flags and things like that. There people are sliding in through there like terrorists and things. I've seen that. I recognize that. That's like one out of how many? Right, but really fundamentally, it's mostly people just wanting to find work. And that could just be the natural. There's only so much resources, and that's all being gobbled up in the wrong places and not being put in the appropriate places. Again, if I was about to say the word distribution, you would think, oh my God, more the demonized language. And I don't like this guy. I don't like talking that way. Really, it's disillusioning. It really is to speak that way. But the distributions is basically the way that things are, whether again from climate change to our domestic and foreign relations and things like that. And unfortunately, we have a president that we all know is superficial. We took a superficial name, Biden, to combat. Again, another word I don't like really using, for lack of a better word, combat. To against another superficial name, Trump. I really wish you guys would do the homework on this. I mean, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. If you look at Trump's granddaddy sold horse meat to minors and hookers. He set up a brothel. That is real. Okay, that is a true thing. I don't just say that. Just take a look at the guy. Honestly, he's a oh, I could go on and on. I'm not going to make this about Trump, but I have no issues debating him or anyone else, even in my own party. So as I've looked at this, again, very competitive, You know, the people that I'm surrounded with, I'm from here, they're very competitive. They're very like fit. You could say they're very sobered. They're very sober-minded people. And my only thing with that is that, for lack of better candidates, that guys like Don Beyer, he's a centrist Democrat, but he doesn't have any motivation to. He's just going. The real issue with the left is the automatic business structure of people. I guess if you want to say the autopilot of it is just going to a place of excessive. You look at what FDR did, right, with and just keep taking that to the next step. And then the right's like, no, 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 no. But then we don't want to listen to the right because they want unregulated capitalism and imposing religious oppression. You know what I mean? And it just stays that way. So, and you know, I wish that our president, instead of him just eating ice cream and saying "Save America," or his opponent, I guess I'm on the Nevada presidential preference ballot, so the A opponent, whatever, they're both my opponents, really. So it's just wow. I wanted to spend more time really talking about policy, and I hope borders and stuff was appropriate with what I covered. In recap, again, if we can, we have to. It's not our responsibility to improve the socioeconomics over in Mexico, but it is our responsibility to protect our own. And if that would be through a gross domestic product protection, if that would involve decoupling from China, that would involve, we need to mitigate climate change anyways. It would require moving that financial lever and then helping out. Why we can't, we'll have no choice. We can't lose. It's a win-win for everybody. So let's see, where's the 2 minutes left. With political ideologues, I think 80% of people are reasonably of a compromise. Sometimes we just kind of blindly listen to whoever's at that camera, depending on their theatrics or how comfortable they are with what they're talking about, without actually doing any homework. And that's what the media is for. They check that stuff. At least that's the tool that we're accustomed to, and that can get disillusioning. That's why there's the media bias charts. And again, next week I'll make sure to have my screen functioning and all that. I have the ability now, which is good, but it's on me this time. So yeah, you know, it's really cool. You see the way that this media bias chart is, and just you got to look at it, you know, and just accept it, and then that will holds the media accountable from itself, and it can even make it better. You're not crystallized. If you don't rate very well, you can always change your game, and then you could be like, I like this personality because just it vibes with me. You know what I mean? I like their speed, tone, or the background. You know, whatever it is. Maybe you don't like guitar players. I'm not a media personality. I'm not. I'm running for Congress. Oh yeah, 20%. There's 10% on each end, and pretty much 80%. The 10% is the loudest, and it's just they can come in the middle too. Check out my website, leonforcongress.us. There's a donation button on there. I wish it's just you'll see. It's not contradictory if you see why I'm trying to get money out of politics, but recognizing I need some. This is entirely independent. I need a staff. I need to get 1,000 signatures. I could use some donations that you know I would port. We can talk. Send me an email if you don't know. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be up here screaming, "Show me the money," and then trying to get rid of it. But with my medium salary, it's a lot, you know, and I need to. It really is what I need to help to get signatures. I need to. So I'm out of time. Thank you very much. Have a good night.